With the golden, Charles wants to know, with the golden 300s, is it best to order them as ducklings since they're hybrid, or do you breed them?
They are a hybrid. It is best to order them as ducklings because that's the only way you can order them. Okay, so definitely. Don't get sucked into the free meat duck thing that they offer you unless you're going to make a lot of sausage. Metzer actually, if you order 60 or more females, will give you an equivalent number of males for free, and they tell you right online, no one can make money on the meat. They're too small of a bird. But you can order drakes, and they will breed, and they will breed true to even though they're a hybrid, they're a stable hybrid, so they will breed true to type. So you can make your own if that's the heart of the question there. And your ducklings will be sexually dimorphic by color, and you can go on Metzer's website and see what to look for in the two different colors for the first generation of. So you got your hybrid, and then you got hybrid F1 or your F2 generation. Those you'll still be able to look at and tell what's what when they're ducklings. In the third generation, they'll still have all the characteristics as adults, but you'll lose the sexual dimorphism of the ducklings, and you'll have to wait till they mature to be able to tell who's who. And that's the exact same thing with the white 300s. The white 300s and golden 300s are basically the same birds. Metzer had this idea, John Metzer, that if I come up with a white version, maybe we can do something with all these drakes that nobody wants because everybody's buying them for layers. And they've basically said that no one can make money, like I said, on the meat. I think you might be able to do it with sausage, but I just plan on eating a bunch of sausage.
Okay, and on that same note, Charles would like to know, do you have any thoughts on the Anconas and the Swedish breeds? He had read that the Ancona lay nearly as well as the 300s, but it could be bad info.
I have no firsthand knowledge of Anconas. They're probably a great bird. I mean, you can always, get a small number and kind of see how it works out. And we're not exclusionary. We have some Swedish birds. We have some cayugas. We have some rowans. So we just keep the most of our, like the majority of our flock, 80% dedicated layers. And then we have everybody else for fun and variety. So you can do that and maybe isolate the bird and see how it does. The Swedish, though, we do have Swedish, and I can tell you, they do not lay at the rates of the 300s. They probably lay 160, 170 eggs a year based on what best we can tell by estimates. They are a much bigger bird. They are a much better carcass bird. I don't have any knowledge of Anconas at all, but Swedish and cayugas, you get a good, healthy size carcass out of. So those types of breeds are better for the hobbyist that wants dual purpose.
All right. Andy asks, you spoke about the molting periods, but what exactly is molting and how do you identify it?
You'll know it because they basically, not all at once, but they lose every single feather they have. So they're never bare, but in the wild, mallards that can fly and diving ducks and dabbling ducks that can fly during the peak of the molt, become flightless. They can't fly. I mean, that's how much they shed. So this is going to be always in the summer. It might change a little bit by month and what have you based on where you are geographically. It will last about 6 weeks. Ours are just starting now, and you can tell because we have feathers inside the holding area. You'd almost be worried, maybe you lost a duck or two because there's so many feathers. And that quantity of feathers will come up. All of your ducks that are pretty marked ducks, like your rowans and your shiny cayugas and stuff, they'll start to look really pale in color, and they'll start to lose their color because they're actually losing their feathers. And like a rowan, which is, looks like a big mallard, a rowan male, it's a big, beautiful silver white duck with a big green head, will end up looking like in the middle of the molt like they do when they're babies and they haven't quite caught all their colors yet. And then you'll know when they're coming out of it because they'll be beautiful. They'll be as beautiful as they were when they came out of it last time or when they first came into their colors. So they kind of lose their color a little bit, lose their impressibility a little bit, and then they blow out. And the reason that egg count crashes is because it takes so much energy to regrow those feathers. The girls just don't have the energy to be producing eggs and growing feathers at that kind of rate. So that's why it happens, what happens. And there is no way that you will not know it's happening because, like I said, by the peak of it, if you wanted to make feather pillows, you could go out with a garden rake. And, because they blow every single – chickens blow part of their feathers. Ducks blow every feather they have by the time it's over said and done.
All right, I got a two-part question. Nicole asked a question, and then Jake kind of had to add on to it, so I'm giving Jake a break here.
Okay.
Chickens can't have cedar chips for litter. This is Nicole's question. Can cedar chips be used for ducks? And then Jake wants to know if you've tried, I guess there's an app that adds, that will let service companies know to dump their wood chips wherever they need to.
I'll do Jake's first because it's simple and easy. No, I've had no luck with it. I filled it out. I even offered to pay for them, and I've never gotten anybody to do it. But it's called chipped.in, I think, is the site, CHIPED.in. And it works great for some people, and the people around here just don't care. As far as the cedar chips, it is best practice not to keep any birds on cedar. They're cousins to the reptiles. That's why they have a scaly feet. And when cedar oils get on their skin, it can cause irritation. We do have some places we've used cedar mulch, and they walk across it. It doesn't seem to bother them. But when they're actually going to be held in an area with it, it would be best practice not to use it. It's too bad because it would certainly be longer lasting, and it would certainly help keep stink down. But we just use basic hardwood native tree mulch. And that works great for us, and it does break down a lot faster, but again, it makes a premium compost when it's all said and done with.
All right, Katie was wondering, with the training of the ducks, do you do the same thing with geese, or is there different techniques for geese?
Basically the same thing, except like I said in the presentation, it's very important if you're going to have them mixed in with other fowl that they're raised with some. When I say that too, I only understand when you're brooding baby ducks and geese, if they don't have a mother, they can't be with the flock. They'll get attacked and beaten up. You have to raise them to about, most people say 12 weeks, but I've had great luck introducing them at 6 to 7 weeks. So you need to, if you were bringing geese in, you would bring in ducklings, and on best case, you would order them from the same company. They would come in the same box. They would go into a brooder together. They would come up together, and that makes them a lot more personable and getting along with ducks. We've actually noticed we have turkeys out on the property too now, and the geese are somewhat not real nasty but aggressive to the turkeys because they're a foreign Asian. They don't understand turkey. They understand duck. And as far as the gooses are concerned at this point, well, those are either little gooses or they're big ducks. They don't really differentiate because they grew with something that looked like that. But as far as training, they're the same. In fact, they're easier because they imprint on you and they'll follow you. Like as soon as I go outside, the geese run over and just kind of want to hang out with you.
Awesome. All right. Carol's got a question. I got a little add-on to it. Do your eggs need to be refrigerated? And my add-on is it the same with chickens where they have a film over the egg and then you wash that off? They don't last as long when they're not refrigerated. And how do you tell customers to care for the eggs?
Well, as I said, for our customers, our shortest growth curve is wash eggs, package eggs, sell eggs, right? So we wash them so that blem, that protective coating is gone. An egg will stay pretty much stable almost indefinitely to a period of several months in a bowl on a countertop if you don't wash it, assuming it didn't get wet or something outside and have this blem removed. An egg will stay perfectly okay for incubation in that environment for up to 10 days. So we know if it's good to incubate, it's going to be good to eat. So when you're deciding you want to incubate, if you want to select all your large eggs, you can set them aside for up to 10 days and then have that whole group start at the same incubation time and hatch within a day of everybody, right? Because they're all going to start actually developing when they get incubating. So that all works out well. Once you wash them, right, there's two sides to this. One, you should refrigerate them, and their storage life, if they're not refrigerated, goes down. Now, as a business person, legally, those eggs need to be in a 40-degree or lower environment within an hour of packaging, and they need to be maintained at that temperature until such time as they're sold to the customer. So we have to refrigerate them just due to logistics, but legally that's what's required of you as someone who's selling eggs, is to store them in a 40-degree. And the government doesn't care about the blem. So if you don't wash them, even though they store infinitely, if you're selling them as food, they need to be stored in an environment below 40 degrees. Now there's an impracticality to that. If you're transporting eggs, And most states you can transport eggs to your customer directly, like a restaurant or whatever. You're probably not going to buy a reefer van to transport 20 dozen eggs or whatever. We put them in coolers or whatever. It's fine. Here's the big thing with eggs. If you have a bad egg, you will know you have a bad egg. When you crack it, when they first start to go bad and they're not really bad, the whites get cloudy. And after that, they stinketh. So the whole 40-degree thing, there's some validity to it. But in the words of Stephen Harris, what temperature do you think the egg was when it came out of the chicken's butt or the duck's butt? I think a duck's body temperature is like 102 degrees. So that egg was right at 102 degrees when it came out of the chicken or the duck. So, yeah, but best practice, get them in the refrigerator. Legally to sell, have to get them in the refrigerator.
All right.
And get a thermometer for your refrigerator, because it's a balance of keeping them below 40 and not having when you have a full refrigerator, a full double door stand-up refrigerator, what can happen is you have the thing set to 36 or whatever, and in the back, eggs freeze and they get ruined. So we have 2 in each refrigerator, little bitty ones in different spots to keep an eye on your temperatures.
Awesome. All right. Kern would like to know, how do you chamomile infuse sunflower?
Oh, it's simple. I just buy a great big bulk thing of chamomile, and when we go to do our soaking in our soaking bucket, we just take a small handful, throw them in there, put the seeds in, and then fill the soaking bucket up with water, and they soak overnight. So it's just a cold chamomile tea infusion, because as the sunflower seeds are absorbing the water, now they're absorbing chamomile infused water, and it's antimicrobial and antifungal, and it helps reduce getting mold in your sprouts. That's why we do that. Another way to help if you have mold issues is just to get a bottle of hydrogen peroxide, keep it where you do your soaking, and give a little splash of that, and that's actually good for the birds too.
Awesome. Stephen would like to know if you prefer the restaurant sales or the private sales, or do you prefer having the mix? And any thoughts on benefits or drawbacks for both?
The restaurant customers are definitely a lot less maintenance. You would think it's the other way around, but once you got them set up with a routine, you either have a regular pickup or you call them, like you do a little inside sales work, like, do you need any this week or not? And you show up, they write you a check, is it? Or they come pick them up, they write you a check, and that's it. Your individual customers are excited. They want to see around the farm, and that's all good and well. But, we do have some that are like, every time they come, they want to be taken. And it's like, you have to set limits with that. So that's your balance point there. And then the other thing is, restaurants never buy 1 dozen. They never ask to buy 18, right? They buy 10, 20, 30 dozen at a shot. And that makes moving volume a lot better. When we were a lot smaller, as far as our total bird count and egg count, we wouldn't have even had an option to do like stores or restaurants, because we can't produce enough volume consistently to serve them. And the individual customers were how we got started, and we'll always take care of them. What we found is, if you develop good relationships with your good customers, they become consistent customers. And I'm not saying you don't take care of the customers you'd prefer not to have. I'm just saying you don't put as much effort into it. So a lot of our individual customers, they only buy once a month, but they'll buy 4 or 6 dozen at a shot. And we've had one, I think, that's been with us like since the first week we were selling eggs officially. And so they're almost as good as like a small restaurant. So I like the blend because, it balances out. We probably right now sell half to restaurants and stores and half to individuals. And I wouldn't want to lose either. But if we lose a restaurant that decides they don't want to buy from us anymore, we were selling 80 dozen a month to one customer. And we lost them because a new chef came in and made a menu change. Had nothing to do with everybody was happy. Apparently, people are pissed about it too. They're like, we can't get – what they were doing on that restaurant was a sweet potato chip duck confit with an egg on top of it. So they were doing thin sliced, crisp sweet potato chips, a big lump of shredded duck confit with gravy, and then a sunny side up duck egg on top. People loved it. But we lost that, where if I lose an individual customer, even one that buys 4 dozen a month, I run a Craigslist ad and replace them. So it's good to have the balance.
All right. Is there this Stephen asks, is there a particular time of year that you add new birds for max production? or have you just added them whenever they've been needed, like after a predator attack?
Kind of like, well, yes and yes, right? So when we lost our birds last year, it was in like November, and we lost 30 birds. And we have like that really low season for the molt, and then we have like a secondary, not as bad, but low season, and then to lose 30 birds on that. So what we did is we went out and bought a whole bunch of adult muscovies, because that's what we could get, that were laying now to fill that gap. So that was a stopgap. Strategically, we bring birds in October, September, October, November. And we do that because we bring in, 30 or 40 birds in that period. When we come around to that molt, those birds are not going to molt in that first season because they're not a year old yet. So that's when we bring those birds in. This year, because we wanted geese, you can only get geese in the spring. They only lay for about a 60-day window. So we had to bring them in the spring. So we brought some Welsh Harlequins in just because they're pretty and they're nice birds, but we had to bring them in the spring. So the problem with that group, there's like 16 of them. They will, when we get to the molt, they won't be 24 weeks old yet. So they're not going to lay, and then it gets worse. Next year, they're going to molt. So that was actually a poor time to bring ducks in, but we had to do it because we wanted geese and we wanted, cohorts for them to come up with. So your best time to bring your ducks in is going to be early to mid-fall. It's not real hot out. It's a lot easier for them to adapt and adjust. It gives them plenty of time to feather out before winter really hits hard, and then you're going to have that new group filling that hole for you, because they're going to have plenty of time to get into laying shape by the time you get to your next molt.
All right. And Kern would like to know, at what age can we transition ducklings from a starter feed to a layer feed?
All right. The geniuses say that you should not feed your ducklings calcium enriched feed if they're going to be layers until they're ready to lay. I don't think it's practical. I just don't. What we do is we feed chick starter to our ducklings for their first 6 weeks, and they're being brooded at that point, so it's easy to do. At about 6 weeks, we start letting them free range with the other ducks during the day, but they go to bed separately till they're about 8 weeks of age. At that point, they're still fed basically a non-calcium enriched, and when they go with the flock, we just let them, and we've had no problems. That's what I do. That's not the right answer, but it's the practical answer. It's just there's no way to do it. And then when we have ducklings that are hatched by a mother duck, what you can do is you can set feeders for them with their special feed in it, and you take like some fencing, because they can get through the fencing until they're about 5 weeks old. And you can put that fencing around their feeders, and then they can go in there and eat it, and the big ducks can't steal it. But them little ducks are still going to eat everything else anyway. And again, we've not had any ducks that can't layer or impacted or anything like that. I think it's a little bit overblown.
All right. Have you tried plucking machines with ducks?
We did it Perma Ethos last year, and it was a nightmare. And then apparently the guys up at Live Springs Perma Ethos Farm tried to do another run of them, and they took the scalding water. I think, we scald chickens at like 140. I think this is scalding water for like 165 or something like that. And apparently it worked almost as good as it does for chickens. So it can be done. It does work. Personally, I'm not going to pluck a duck. I don't. I mean, that must be what my processor does, is scald them and put them through a plucker. But again, I get my birds processed for $5 a bird, and I got better things to do with my time than sit out there plucking a duck. But scalding and plucking does work. I've seen people use the wax method. That seems way too complicated. But I think from what I've seen, even though I haven't done it personally, is you want to get a higher scalding temperature. 50 Ducks in a Hot Tub is a YouTube channel. This is a guy up in Canada that had a bunch of ducks. He had like 500 ducks. He lives on a lake. And he has a whole series of processing videos, and there he probably tells you the temperature. And that's what he's using, a whiz bang and a scalder.
All right. Aaron would like to know, how do you find a processor for livestock? Where do you go for that?
It was hard. It was hard. And I mean, like another reason I don't do meat ducks is I can't use my processor because they're not inspected for poultry by FDA. So I can't use them and sell my birds. I can only use them for personal. And we just basically, we found plenty of places to do chickens around here. Ducks was a lot harder. So we just called around, we searched online, we'd find a processor, and I don't do it. And we'd say, do you know anybody that does? And we finally found this place out in Weatherford. It's about a 20-minute drive for me. So it wasn't easy. And the one place we found was called something Hanson or Hastings or something down in Mansfield. It sounds like a good old-fashioned just American name. I don't know what language those people speak, but I still don't know if they do ducks or not. I'd call them up and I'd go, do you guys process ducks? And they'd say, you come Tuesday. No. Yeah, well, do you process ducks? You have chickens? No, ducks. And I'd go, quack, quack, duck, quack, quack, duck. And I tried speaking Spanish to them. That didn't work. And I had somebody call them that spoke Korean, and that didn't work. So I don't know. And they'd say, yes, we do. And then they'd say, no, we don't. And they'd say, yes, we do. And I'd be like, I don't believe you. So we finally got lucky and found this guy. So it wasn't easy. So you just have to check around and keep talking to people. And if you want to do meat, I really believe that we should all specialize in what we do well. And I would try to find a state or federally inspected facility, but it's difficult. But it can be done, and some states is easier than others.
All right. Adrian would like to know if ducklings are as fragile as chicks and turkey poults when they're young.
Yeah, for like a week. At about a week and a half, they turn into little Mack trucks. I mean, if you step on them or something, obviously, but they're tough. Their problem is until they get feathers, you cannot let them get wet without being able to get dry very quickly. So the biggest thing that they die of in brooders is they get wet, they get matted, and they all clump up, and whoever's inside can't dry out. And even with everybody else on top of them, they freeze to death. And a soaking wet duckling, I've seen them go down like that if they're not under a heat lamp. So if you watch Duck Chronicles, the first season right at the beginning, it's at duckchronicles.com, which is a YouTube playlist, you'll see this little contraption I came up with. Basically is a piece of plywood cut like a picture frame with a piece of hardware cloth on it and a cheapo like $1 paint roller can for small paintbrush roller underneath it. And that sets in the brooder, and the water sits on top of that. And I don't use a standard water. I use the 8-inch galvanized metal feeders with the holes in them. We set that on there and we fill that with water. They can stick their beaks in there, they can drink water, but everything they spill goes down through those holes into that catch pan, and it keeps them from getting matted up and wet. And I'm a big believer in get them out of the brooder and outside as quickly as possible, but you got to be able to provide shelter from rain, heat, and dry. Once you get them to where they're even just starting to put feathers on, I mean, if you kill them, you've done something bad wrong.
All right. Mark says you hit cow equivalents very quickly. How many ducks equal one cow?
It's by weight. So if you had a 5-pound average duck and you had 100 ducks, you'd have 500 pounds, and a cattle unit is 1,000 pounds. So you'd have a half a cattle unit. I mean, and you kind of have to know cattle unit grazing for that to work out for you, but a lot of it can be done by just looking at your land. And I would say to everybody out there, if you're thinking of getting into this, get a couple dozen birds and learn and decide if this is right for you. Develop a small market, because you can't develop, that's the problem. You cart before the horse. You can't really develop much of a market with a couple dozen birds, but you'll learn your system. And then if you decide it's viable, then you can scale up. That's exactly what we did. Our first flock of ducks was 26 birds, and there were probably 6 of them were drakes. And it gave us the confidence and gave us the system to scale up. Do not, because of this presentation, if you've never raised ducks before, go out and order 100, 300 layers tomorrow, because you're going to make yourself miserable. You need to get your whole system end to end figured out, and then you can work on your land capacity.
All right. Jed says, my ducks produce eggs of all sizes. Most are large, but a few are smaller. Do you have this same thing? And what is the limit of weight size of a saleable egg?
That's very good. So everybody's going to set their own limit. What we've noticed is when the birds start to lay, when they first start, you get smaller eggs, and then they get bigger. Some birds lay smaller eggs, right? And they just do. The number we came up with for where we take the egg out of the standard carton and we either use it for personal use, so we call them mini eggs, is 2.2 ounces. Why? Because Dorothy looked at it and said, I'd sell that, I wouldn't sell that, weighed them side by side, and eventually decided that was her number. She's gotten pretty good. She can usually pick up an egg and go 3.1 ounces, and it's like bang on now. Because I think I figured out the other day, just since we've gotten our new candler last year, she's probably candled 18,000 eggs now. So she's gotten good at that. But if it's like, I'm not sure, she weighs it. So we don't weigh all our eggs. Just when one looks a little small, okay, it's 2.4, in it goes. And then what we do is we try not to have like one carton with all jumbo, super huge eggs, and then one with all smaller but big enough eggs. We kind of make sure there's a mix so that you get a nice total weight of eggs about the same in every package. Anything below that, we sell mini duck eggs for $6 a dozen. A lot of people are happy to buy them when we're low and we don't have any other option. And then I like to eat eggs. So, most of them actually go to me, and whatever I can eat. I got big old dogs down here that really like eggs too.
Now, speaking of dogs, Rosalind asked, with hawks and owls, are the dogs enough to scare them off and keep them away? Or do you have any other advice?
I don't really know about owls. We don't seem to have many of them around here, but hawks don't like dogs when the dogs are out. The problem is, right now they're both laying in here in the air conditioning with me. But hawks in general don't like to see a lot of activity going on with big creatures that they think that thing might eat me. It does help to train the dogs to have a hatred for them. And I can't tell you how to do it for your dog. All I can tell you that I've done is when I see, and I just figure I want the dog to assume that any large bird needs to go away. So if it's a heron, if it's a turkey vulture, if it's, anything, and I see it around and the dog's out there, it's like a teachable moment. And I'll just go, ooh, what is that? What is that? You better get that. And he, that kind of keys him up, and he zones in and he goes out and barks and chases it. So if we have a hawk come land in a tree or something, if the dog's out there, he goes, hey. Another thing that's nice with ducks, if most of your hawks are smaller hawks like Cooper's hawks and stuff like that, they're a lot less bold about what they're doing because they look down and they see this bird. And hawks can do, I think, some sort of math, because what they can figure out is, okay, that's a 5-pound bird, and a Cooper's hawk weighs about 4 pounds. And a Cooper's hawk cannot carry a 5-pound bird away. So it can come down there and it can kill your duck. I mean, it can just do it quick. But then it has to sit there and eat that bird. So if it feels threatened, it's a lot less likely. We've actually never lost a chicken to a hawk. I mean, a duck to a hawk. We lost one chicken to a hawk when we had chickens. We've never lost a duck yet. I'm not saying it can't happen or it's not going to happen. It just hasn't been a big problem.
All right. Mark has a dairy farm, and he wants to know if this model would work in a movable operation to put fertility back into that dairy farm.
Okay, movable. Okay, so then you're talking about moving the holding area, basically. First of all, I think it would be great because ducks will eat bugs and all kinds of things right out of cow patties. I know it's gross, but they'll do it. They also, Muscovies especially, are very big on eating flies. They use Muscovy ducks for fly control in dairies in Canada. That's like a major organic control method. The problem with putting ducks in a movable model, they like a routine, okay? So they want to go to the same place every night. So as long as you can move it basically one unit every day and they become addicted to the thing that's containing them, then it'll work. If you're going to try to move it, 2 acres away, it's not going to happen. They're not like cattle. You can just, herd them wherever you want them to go like that. Even if you do, they're going to be unhappy. If you had a bigger piece of land, it would probably work really good. But then you got to figure out how many ducks to what confinement area and how are you going to make that confinement area movable. I don't know how they're going to work out with like electronet or something like that. I don't like working with that stuff. I kind of feel like it's a pain in the butt. What we use for our brooding of our young when they're old enough to be outside, but we don't want them in the flock yet, we take 4 16-foot cattle panels that have chicken wire across the bottom of them so that they can't slip through, and we put them together with heavy-duty tie wraps, and we just drag that. That gets to be cumbersome on a daily basis, though. So I don't really know how that'll work. If you can skin a home that's portable, and your model will let you move it just a little bit every day, so that they still feel like they're going home at night, it'd probably work just fine. But you're gonna have to figure that part out.
All right. Lynn says, I find most folks seem to have preconceived notions about duck eggs. For example, people eat duck eggs? They get that question a lot. How do you overcome these type of people who simply have never heard of it?
I mean, to be honest, one of the big things we have going for us is we're in Dallas-Fort Worth. We have a total metropolitan population of 6.2 million people. Doesn't take much to move, 80 to 100 dozen duck eggs a year when you have that kind of a market to work with. And there is becoming more and more of a niche product market. Again, restaurants are big on it, because when a restaurant puts it on there, and then it's like, oh, it's neat, I want to try it. Where it's like, and our neighbors are not, like when we had chickens, they were giving neighbors eggs all the time. They don't want them. Texas redneck culture. Like, you don't eat duck eggs, you eat chicken eggs. They're only good for bacon or whatever. So there is that hurdle, but there are people, like, what you do is you define your niches. So one thing you might do is approach all the chiropractors in your area, because they give people nutritional counseling as well. And they're generally informed as to the health benefits of duck eggs. So one chiropractor has probably sent us 4 or 5 customers now. We just know he's some chiropractor in Irving. We don't even know what his name is, because he found out about us. Asian communities love duck eggs. Dorothy went to get her nails done at the nail salon, and it's all Asian ladies in there, and she loaded the car up with duck eggs, and I think she sold $80 worth of duck eggs. So Asians don't have that preconception. In fact, in a lot of places like China, Vietnam, Thailand, etc., people don't really eat a lot of chicken eggs. Chicken eggs are expensive. Duck eggs are the common man food. And when they come here, it's like great for a week, because now I can have chicken eggs. And then they eat the chicken eggs and go, oh, this isn't that great. And they start missing those duck eggs. So that's another market. And then your other market is there's a tremendous number of people in this country that are allergic to eggs. And what they're actually allergic to is what's in the egg, or some of them are allergic to chicken eggs. Not everybody that's allergic to chicken eggs can safely eat duck eggs. And if the person doesn't know, they need to use caution and go in moderation first. But a lot of our customers are allergic to chicken eggs and can eat duck eggs. The other thing is, we've had a lot of people, now I'm not saying any kind of health claims or something, we've had people that are undergoing cancer treatments and stuff like that, and they do nutritional research, and they make duck eggs part of their regime. So those types of niches, instead of trying to convince someone against their will, look for the people that are out seeking duck eggs. And there's no better way to do this as far as like your warm market. Have people over and cook them for them. Don't even tell them what they are. Make one sunny side up, put it on a piece of sourdough, and hand it to them with a couple slabs of bacon, and they'll be like, this is the best egg I ever ate. It's a duck egg. You want to buy them? They're $8 a dozen. Another thing is an educational curve with your customers. There is this conception by people that have tried them that duck eggs are rubbery and hard and they taste funky and stuff, and they can if you cook them wrong. When you cook a duck egg, you take that heat down and you take longer to cook it. Duck eggs, one of their many benefits is they have more protein and they have more of the good cholesterol in them. Those two things together, if you cook them fast, especially the whites, tend to get rubbery. If you just take a little longer to get there, they make the best sunny side up or over easy egg you'll ever eat in your life. I mean, the yolk is like a sauce, right? When I go out to, I get breakfast somewhere now, and I make the mistake of ordering eggs, and I order over easy eggs, and they bring them to me, and I cut into that yolk, and it runs like water. I'm just like, that's not an egg. It's, even if it's a good quality egg, it's still it's thin compared to a duck egg. That's what really makes them fantastic. Scrambled, they taste like the best chicken egg you ever ate. It's hard to tell it's not a chicken egg when they're scrambled. So it's a matter of getting people to try them, and it's a matter of just finding the people that are looking for what you're selling. I mean, I wouldn't try to sell a Ferrari to somebody with a Monte Carlo budget, and I wouldn't try to sell a duck egg to somebody that thinks duck eggs suck. I would just look for people that understand the difference. But putting out a lot of information on your site, your blog, recipe, stuff like that, a lot of times people just see something and also now it's real.
All right. Christian wants to know some information about diseases. So what diseases are ducks prone to, and what methods are best to treat those diseases?
I would advise you on that just because I could, do an hour on duck diseases because when we had the problem, I became an immediate self-taught expert. But there's a lot of different ones. Duck cholera is one. That was the one we think they had. There's avian influenza. I can't remember what it's called, but there's one that actually, we have ducks that limp sometime, and I always try to make sure it's actually an injury because there's actually a virus that can cause them to limp. But the number one thing you can do to prevent illness of any kind is to make sure you don't have standing water in their holding areas. That's where all of that stuff breeds, and that's how it becomes transmissible back and forth. But if you just Google duck diseases, that's what I did, and you'll find I can't remember them all by name, but there's 5 big ones. And the one that you really don't want to see is what we think we have, which is duck cholera, because it can decimate your flock. Most of them are easily treatable with antibiotics. The problem is finding a vet who will prescribe the dosage for 100 ducks at once, because most ducks aren't capable of diagnosing it. We autopsied the duck that died, and then we put it in the deep freezer so we could take it there. And they said once it's been frozen, you can't test it, or I don't know what the hell they were talking about. But we were like, well, we could, we don't really want to put them on antibiotics. But we could just give them a 1-week course of antibiotics so we don't lose our whole flock. And they wouldn't do it. They wanted to wait till another duck died. Well, by the time that happened, we had already solved the drainage issue that we were having because we had basically flooding in May, and we didn't lose anymore. So Google duck diseases, and you'll find the big 5 and what to do about them.
All right. Gene asks if do you have any experience with ducks and chickens being managed together? They already have a small flock of chickens, and they want to know if they need to keep them separate if they get ducks.
We didn't have any problem, but we didn't co-house. We co-mingled, but we didn't co-house. They both had their own area. So I don't know what's going to happen when you put them together. I tend to side to I wouldn't, because chickens roost and ducks don't. And chickens poop and ducks are underneath them. And that just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Now, the good news, chickens are going to go in a coop. Ducks are not going to go in a coop. So it would be very reasonable to have a holding area, have a chicken coop that's attached to that holding area, and then have some, lean-tos and stuff for your ducks out in the holding area, because unless you're in really, really northern climates and in the middle of winter, they don't want to go into that building anyway. Our ducks go in that building when they get broody because they know it's protected and they can be alone, and they go in there when it's like pouring ice in like we have a bad winter storm or something. Otherwise, they're almost never in there. They're always out. And they're not like chickens. Like chickens go to sleep, right? You go out in the middle of the night in your chicken coop and you like push a chicken hard enough, it'll fall off the roost and hit the ground and be like, what's up, man? You go out at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, duck, 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 and you hear, rah, 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 rah. They're still partying. So I would say, yes, they can be together, but no, I wouldn't put them in the same housing.
All right. Mark wants to know if he should market his restaurant prices different than the retail price.
We don't.
Same price.
We don't. I mean, that's all I can say is we came up with a – see, our price wasn't based on what you wanted to pay. Our price was based on an Excel spreadsheet that said if I don't make $3.50 a dozen for these eggs, I don't want to do this anymore. So that's my floor. Now, we did do a sale for like our best customers and what have you. When we're in this huge surplus and it cleaned a lot of them out, we dropped the price to $6, but we were still making good money at that point because their production we're putting the same amount of effort in and we still had this huge swell of production. But we don't sell, we've had people say, well, what if I buy 5 dozen? Well, I charge the guy that buys 30 dozen $8. So what chance do you have, right? So, I mean, I think one of the biggest things we can do as producers is you set your price based on your expense and your necessary profit to make it worth doing. And then if you think somebody else will pay more, well, that's fine. But we kind of feel like we've reached a great price. And the yuppie farm to table store can still throw $5 on that and still make $5 a dozen. They're actually making more than we are. They're selling at $13 a freaking dozen. I don't know how they do it. But they have a retail outlet that people walk in the door and buy from, I guess, But the funny thing is we put a little business card on the top of every single egg carton, goes in that store, and occasionally someone picks up the phone and says, how much do you sell duck eggs for? $8. Everybody gets the same price.
Do you have any thoughts on value-added products like pickled duck eggs or anything else like that? Joshua, what?
Not really. I haven't gotten into it. I know a lot of the Asian customers we have, they make salted eggs out of them. You might want to Google how to do that. Pickled duck eggs, I think they'd be good. I've never actually made any. We usually pickle quail eggs just because they're like poppers. You make pickled jalapeno quail eggs. Those are good. But if I was going to try something around here, I might do salted. But it seems like some of these people that are from Asia, like they want to do the salt, like that's something they want to do. I mean, you could do blown eggs and painted or whatever, but I just haven't dealt with it at all. I mean, like I said, I think we should focus on what we're good at, and what we're good at is growing, raising, producing, packaging, and that's where I want to draw the line.
All right. Chris has some questions on the marketing side. Can you talk more about the marketing process? How do you find a new customer / restaurant? Do you cold call them? And what do you look for in finding your market? On one of your TSP episodes, you talked about selling duck eggs to local oncology clinics who promoted duck eggs for health. How do you find the right type of clinics for this?
Yeah, I think we might have mixed those because we do have some cancer patients that buy eggs, but what we actually went to look for to market was actually chiropractors and like health trainers, and we just hit them all and give them a dozen eggs. Restaurants, what we'll do is we get on the internet and we find non-chain, local, higher end, higher dollar per plate restaurants, and we'll look at their menu. And if they're a place that's not selling their salads for like $9 or $10, we're not even calling them, right? Because that's what we're looking for. The place that sells lettuce and a radish and some vinaigrette for $9. That's our sweet spot. That's the guy that's willing to spend the money and knows he can turn it for a profit. And then what Dorothy will do is she'll call, generally like a good day to call is like 11:30, 12 o'clock on like a Tuesday or like a Wednesday. That's like the time you can get the chef on the phone. She'll ask to talk to the chef, the sous chef, or the manager. And if she can get one of them on the phone, she'll just give them our basic value proposition that we are local, that we do duck eggs and duck eggs only. We do quail now too, but before ducking, we feed them sprouts, we feed them non-GMO, and can I bring you 3 or 4 dozen to sample? And the reason instead of giving like the chiropractor stuff, we just give them a dozen, just so they'll take them home and cook them. And we figure if they throw them away, it was marketing expense, whatever, it's gone. We want to give that restaurant 3 or 4 dozen because that's enough for that chef to go ahead and cook a couple for himself and go, yeah, these are good. Come up with something and run some kind of special, and actually put them on the menu for a day as top. Like a lot of people just put them on top of a burger and try it, actually do something with it. And if that works, then we're going to get repeat business from them. Where if you only gave them a dozen eggs, they don't have enough to put them on the menu even for a day. So that's kind of our process. She'll just call them. She'll ask to talk to them. She'll give them our basic pitch, tell them where we're at, give them our website and our phone number and say, can I bring you some to sample? And when she goes in there, we got really good looking business cards, great logo on them. She reinforces the story, hands them the eggs. And we say, like, once you get into a restaurant, it's easier. We show them, we've got pictures. Here's our eggs, at Clair. Here's our eggs at the Cadillac Ranch, and then that gives chefs an idea. And sometimes that's another thing you have to do is like give them an idea, because we've talked to chefs that are like, this sounds great, but I don't know what we do with them. Do you sell burgers? Yeah. Offer them as an option on top of a burger. Oh yeah, that's great. And see, that's easy because it fits what they're doing. If you can find someone that's already using duck eggs and you're local, I almost guarantee you, unless they have another local person, you're going to get the business because they're getting them from Cisco or something like that. They're low quality. They source them all over. And yeah, they're a duck egg, but they're going to be yellow, not orange. And as soon as they see your eggs, if you're raising them the way we talked about today, you're going to push that right out. And they can also see they can sell that it's local. So you're looking for your higher end restaurants. You're looking for a restaurant that if you and your wife or you and your husband went out to it and you sat down, you had, 2 plates of food, a side, and a bottle of wine, you're in it for $100. That's That's really the kind of thing you're looking for. That doesn't mean all dressed up pretentious, but it's that kind of, yuppie-ish, farm to fork vibe, local. That's what you're looking for. And those places, Dorothy is not a salesperson, and I gave her like 30 minutes of sales training, and the next day she's on the phone cold calling and closing deals because it's such an easy thing to get the person to listen to you about. And they don't, they probably have, because microgreens have taken off and they are relatively easy to grow and people can do them in apartments and stuff like that. They probably have people hitting them up for stuff like that all the time. But it actually takes a significant piece of land and a significant commitment to be able to produce, 100 dozen eggs a month. And if you're going to have multiple restaurant customers, that's kind of the production volume you need to get to. So the fact that you can do it puts you in a unique position, and there's not a lot of competition, at least right now.
All right. We're going to do 2 more questions because we've already answered 45 guys, and there's still 50 to go. So
yeah, that's what we're going to have to call it.
Yeah, we'll just do 2 more, and then please, if your question didn't get answered, please leave them in the event page comments. So if you just go to tv.permaethos.com, click on Jack Spirko's live presentation, ask your questions there, and I'm sure Jack would be happy to pop in and answer them. All right,
Yeah.
Last 2 questions. City water. How do you feel about all I got is city water? I don't have a well. It's chlorinated. What do I do? Should I even bother?
I would still do it. I mean, I would prefer you not have to do that, but I don't think it's practical to filter. If you're having to filter pools and stuff like that, it's not practical. However, it would be completely practical to filter their dedicated drinking water in their holding area. So you could still do that. I would not do it because of that. I would certainly prefer to not use city water on my livestock. I mean, that's why I feel we're fortunate we have a well. But I would also say there's, for the drinking anyway, like, again, you can't fill 10 kiddie pools a day with rain catch. It just isn't going to work. But we put in 2 1,500-gallon rain tanks on our smallest outbuilding, and that's like 800 square feet. So that holds 3,000 gallons of water. And there's, if I didn't have a well, there's no problem there providing all the dedicated drinking water for our animals. So even one good-sized rain tank, or, IBCs are about 300 gallons, 330 gallons a piece. 10 of those daisy chain, and you got 3,000 gallons of catchment for some gutters and some downpipe. It's not that expensive to do. The thing with IBCs is you really got to make sure you block out the light, or you're going to have algal blooms. We just use the black poly tanks like you get from Tractor Supply, and we've never had a speck of green in our water. So that would be another option. But if I couldn't do that and I couldn't do it well, I wouldn't not do livestock because of the city water.
All right. Last question. Matt would like to know about bees and ducks and how they work together, what you do. He's going to get 50 ducks and put them in a pond without any fencing around it. And he's just concerned about his 2 beehives. And there was another question about ants and things like that.
Yeah.
Ants and beetles.
Okay, so let's start with the bees. We did nothing. And the bees flew around and did their thing, and I'm sure the ducks ate a bee or 2. In fact, I know, especially the ducklings, sometimes they'd be in the kiddie pool and a bee'd come to drink the water, and they would just hammer it. But, I mean, that's not going to, devastate your bee population. But the ducks would hang right around, walking around the beehives. The bees ignored the ducks ignored the bees. It just wasn't a problem. Ants. My concern would be when you start moving your baby ducklings outside, if you have them in a duck tract or something, like making sure you're not parking them on top of an anthill. As you know, Joe, we have a few fire ants here, and it's never been an issue. It's never been a problem. The ducks don't eat the ants. The ants don't seem to bother the ducks unless the ducks are in the ant bed. And then if the ducks do get stung a bit, they know to leave. They're not stupid animals. They're really not. It just hasn't been a problem. Now, beetles, I don't know what to say. I don't have many beetles, and I don't think that anything you'd have there is duck food. But just don't worry about the bees at all. It's not a problem. There was never any real interaction, like I said, other than, and it did seem like the big ducks really cared about them, but the babies would eat the the piece when they came to get water. It was kind of cool to watch like a 3-day-old baby duck, like just tearing ass on a bee and killing it, to be that much of a predator when they're that young, because when the mothers hatch them, they will swim. And it's okay for them because the mothers will take care of them, and they can swim at like day 2, day 3 when they have a mother. And yeah, they're guys, I'll tell you what, you'd be impressed at the predatory nature of a 3-day-old duck.
All right. Thank you very much, Jack, for being on Permaethos television presentations. Glad to have you. Episode 1. All right. So, guys, the recorded version of this will be available tomorrow on tv.permaethos.com, and it's going to be free. We are going to put up the presentation Jack gave, the slideshow. I'll have a version of that up there for you. And then please, once again, if we didn't get your questions, go ahead and ask them in the presentation page, and Jack will try to get to those.